So I gave her a call and was like, would you want to do Southbound? And she was like, I actually would. So
Yeah, okay.
basically, like, slowly but surely, I ended up with this amazing team of female athletes from all over the world, like, not just the US, but, I had somebody else from Switzerland, I had my friend from Germany, I had my one friend come out from LA. So I had a very diverse crew, and, I think I could have amassed a crew that.
Welcome to the People Around podcast. I'm excited for today's episode. I have a special guest here with me today. But before we get into our guest and intro the guest, I want to ask you, when's the last time you guys been to Canada or driven to Canada? For my East Coast people, how long did that take? 8-10 hours. I used to live in Seattle. That was a quick drive, 200 miles or so. But how long is that taking you to get there? Well, today's guest ran from Canada, to NYC with the only all-female team to do it in South Bend 400. I'm excited, as you can tell from this episode. Julia here is part of a team that ran from Canada to NYC, which sounds insane as I say this. She's run the Speed Project, has done a couple majors like London, Berlin, and then some. I'm happy to have Julia here. Welcome aboard, Julia. Thanks for hopping on. I appreciate you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, thank you for the great introduction. That's all true. All of the above. I have done those things. I think I've done most of the races that like New York Roadrunners offers at this point, and
Okay.
then some. I also do a little bit of trail running, so I've done like the Breakneck Ridge half up in Beacon, New York, and yeah, all of this is true. I've also ran a really crazy trail marathon out in the Pyrenees Mountains, and I have also done LA Marathon. So I think any distance is fun. You just gotta want to do it.
Yeah, of course. That sounds insane. The Great Pyrenees Mountains. That's a goal trip of mine, even if it's not running. So like that sounds amazing. You kind of just I'm picturing it now as you're saying this. But let me ask you. Well, first off, for those of you listening, if you can tell, she's by way of NYC. We got another New York on the pod. I should have worn my Yankees hat today, but next time. But
That's.
that's right.
I'm
She's
from
from Queens,
Queens,
or
so it's a must.
okay, I'll give you a little bit of context before we move forward. So I grew up Yankees. Paul O'Neill was my favorite player all time. So this is like old school 90s Yankees. I remember I went with my dad once to the stadium. And this is back when, like, if you went early, you could meet the player. Now you probably get tight
Yeah,
row.
never.
But he was a Mets fan. He was always a Mets fan. Old school New Yorkers, Mets fan, Jets, all the team of the old school people in New York. I know you understand this, but I was always Giants and Yankees. But all respect to the Mets too. I was always a Mets fan too because this is what we had to watch in the household. When you're young, dad controls the TV. Mike Piazza was also one of my favorite
Yes.
players and how I got into starting in baseball. I met him in Florida once too, which was pretty cool. So no disrespect there, or none will be tolerated. I respect your New York Mets.
And I think the Mets are trying to do a little bit better. We got some decent players on the team now.
Yeah.
If they lose one game, they'll win the next, and vice versa. I was happy that enough. Like I went to a game recently and they won, so I'm like, all right, like maybe not so bad, but
Yeah.
time will
I mean,
tell.
baseball now is crazy. There's just so much money. It's hard to get a good team. The Mets have always not had the Yankees budget. So I do miss Shea Stadium. I'll give you that. The old stadium versus City
Well,
Field.
yeah, same.
But anyway, baseball talk. Sorry if you're not a New Yorker, but we all go New York over here. That said, I love all the racing you're doing in community. I want to take it back a little bit. Like, how did you get into running? I also incline. I always ask everyone this, but I'm also inclined to ask you as a fellow New Yorker because when I grew up in New York, running was nowhere near as big as it is now. So, like, how did you get it running? What was your starts like?
Totally. So it was a complete accident. It was a complete accident. In college, I couldn't even do like a push up, and I would tell like my friends, like, oh man, like I gotta get strong. And so I started lifting, just going to the gym in college. I had like a really crazy bout of depression, and the gym saved my life. I feel like people either get like really religious or like really fit when things go
Yeah.
wrong in their life. And I was not going to church, so I was definitely in the gym. Fast forward, I've like had this weird shoulder issue, and my barber of all people was like, "Hey, you should go to my physical therapist. He's the owner of this practice called Motive New York, which puts on these like long runs in the summer." And I basically came in at like, I think year two or maybe even year one of them doing the long runs.
Hmm.
And I suddenly was, doing the social media for them as well. And so I was in the studio seeing all of these pretty, I want to say, elite athletes coming in and out. And most of them were runners, and they were coming in not for rehab, but more prehab. And simultaneously, I'm sitting at the front desk. I'm also like asking people awkwardly if I can like record them to like, I'm trying to launch their TikTok. I'm doing like the reels and stuff. This is like when these things were like first coming out there, like right
Yeah.
after the pandemic. And I was like, damn, like I told myself maybe I'll run a marathon for like a bucket list thing when I'm 25, but I chickened out. And I think then at this point I was turning 27 or like 26, turning 27. And I was like, okay, like there's no time like the present. So this one person who was there was like, look, just sign up for a marathon and I'll write your plan. And so I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to get over like my hate for running and my hate for like the cold.
Okay.
So I signed up for what for the last 2 years has been canceled, but I signed up for the Brooklyn Marathon. The year I did it was the last year in recent history that they stopped it
Okay.
thereafter, just because they had some like hydration issues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that was set for April. So I started January 1 in the cold, and I was like, man, like this
That's
is
pretty
gonna be
rough.
rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember like sitting in front of my apartment after I finished that first run, like, I guess it's only up from here, but damn, like this is gonna be hard. And it certainly was like the hardest thing I've ever done. I did a lot of running on the treadmill because I still didn't want to be outside, but I also did do a lot of outside running. I figured out my layering systems and stuff. And, they say like you're 20 degrees hotter when you run. So just like, I didn't know. So
Yeah.
that all happened. And I was like, okay, ran the race, couldn't walk for a week, wanted to like basically put all this stuff in my house, like to make my bathroom handicapped after that, so I could get up and down.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, never again. And then I had some friends who worked for a gym out in LA, and they were doing a pop up here in New York, and they were like, hey, like one of the workouts this week is going to be a run, like come run at this run club. I was like, oh man, I'm done running, man. Like, I'm not doing that again. Also, like, they're going to drop me. I'm going to be slow. I don't know. I just feel like intimidated. But I went. I had already been going to all the other workouts. So I was like, you know what? Let's see. Let's give it a go. And that was my first look at a crew that was diverse, a crew that I felt safe with, that I had fun. And I kind of got the bug. Just, they say like if you want to run long, run with people, and that's exactly what
Yeah, for
happened.
sure.
It became like my Thursday night, like in my workout plan, what I was doing. And through that, I was fortunate enough to get a bib to run New York City Marathon. And, you know, the crew, people are always talking about what they're up to and what races they're doing. So you end up signing up. And I signed up for like 20 races that year.
Sheesh.
Like I did
Okay.
both of the Brooklyn halves. I did New York Marathon again, like the following year. I did the Brooklyn Mile. I did, anything. Didn't really hit injury until the next year,
Okay.
and kind of started figuring it out from there. Fortunately enough, I then understood how to plan and do all of those sorts of things. Like, okay, like I understand the week over week load with running and trying to mix it in with my workouts. And I kind of do any and all sports. So, like, I like to cycle as well. So, I was out there cycling as well, going to like the 9W market. If you're a New Yorker, like, but it's been a lot of fun. I still am running. I'm a little tired right now. I just finished London and it was a really hot, hard day
Yeah.
out there. I think my ego is still a little bit bruised. I was trying to Boston qualify and it just totally didn't happen. But it's okay. I think that's also why people's drive for running is so relentless. Like, if it was easy, I don't think people would enjoy it as much. Like, I think there's something about striving to want to be better that makes it fun.
Yeah, I
You're like,
agree.
okay, like, no one run is the same. And, like, if I aced all my runs, it would just be, like, mundane and I'd probably find another sport. But yeah.
No, I agree with you on that. It's like there's if all your races went well, right? Like it'd get boring, but also there's something about after you get over the hump of, hey, I don't like running, I love running now. It becomes a thing where like every nuance just makes it that much more fun. Like whether it be injury, whether it be like this race was hot, whether like, oh damn, I hit my time this one, I want to go faster, or I didn't hit my capability on that one. At least that's part of what drives me for sure, like with marathoning, and you're always like just doing better, you're improving yourself day in and day out.
I think you always learn. Every block you learn something.
Yeah, agreed for sure. Like I'm learning a hard lesson right now coming back from injury. I'm dying to run. Like my mind is a lot stronger than it was years ago now, and it's just like my mind is running 60 miles a week. My body's like, not yet.
Yeah, totally.
But hey, I'm happy to be out there. We're finally getting back on track. I want to ask you real quick. So you mentioned your first race, which is funny. A lot of the guests I've had on and everyone I speak to, we all jump to the marathon for some reason. No one's
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna start with a 5K. I'm gonna start with a 10K half. And then in your case, you went straight into a whole bunch of races and Road Runner New York and all that stuff. What was the time from that first one to those 20 something races later?
I think some of it was like same year.
Okay.
I think like one of the Brooklyn halves must have been the same year. So that was the other part of, I guess, like, I hate to use this word, but for lack of other words to use, popularity. With like my running journey was that the first year of my running journey, I ended up running 3 marathons.
Wow.
But
Okay.
it was because I was running 9+1 that initial year to then be able to run New York Marathon. So
Yeah.
I had done Brooklyn, and that was in April. Simultaneously, I was still running these other New York Roadrunner races, like a 4 miler or whatever it was, doing 9+1.
Yep.
And unfortunately, everybody runs now. So
Yeah.
all of the options were basically capped, and my only option was to run the virtual as 9+1 as one of my races. So I went
Okay.
out there like the first week knowing that I had also already gotten a bib for New York Marathon. And I was like, I need time to like rest in between like me running this virtual marathon and the actual marathon now because I suddenly had gotten a bib for it. And of course I was going to run it. So I was like, damn, like, what's going to happen? So I ended up running the virtual like 2 weeks before the actual marathon, and then my marathon was basically like 45 minutes faster than my initial uh, Brooklyn marathon.
Yeah.
And then the year after, that March, so November, December, January, February, March, I ended up running LA marathon and basically like continuing my journey from there. But when you're training, you end up doing a 5K at some point in the week, and you end up doing a half at some point in
Yeah,
the
you do.
week. So,
True.
you end up understanding what your times might be for those races. But um, in all honesty, like I thought about maybe like looking for a Chicago bib for this year. But I think I want to give the marathon more respect than it's been getting and maybe just let it be something for next year and spend the rest of this year just getting strong again and bulletproofing what I have found to be like my true weak points and listening to my body a little bit more because, as any other runner knows, like it sucks to be injured and I don't like to perpetuate like running through injury or on injury and I don't like running in pain and I've been running through some pain. So I just want
Yeah.
to get rid of it and run pain free and run the paces that I know I'm capable of versus just always being like, I could have done better had I done XYZ.
Yeah, exactly. Had I recovered, listened to my
Yeah, like
body,
I've
etc.
done so many amazing races in such a short amount of time that like, what's going to happen when I do all of them? And it's only 5 years in potentially. Like I think I can afford to wait a little bit.
Did you start in COVID year 2020?
No, I started like the ending ish of 2021.
Okay, you said 5 years. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
2020, roughly about. I was about to say, oh, COVID baby, high five.
Yeah, no, no, no. After that, COVID did not get me.
Gotcha. Well, I want to pause on that. You said something like that's key. Like you said, you want to respect the marathon distance. That's something that's come up a lot, right?
Totally.
And like I think that's important as the sport gets hella popular. And I love it, right? Especially like my journey is somewhat similar to yours. Like I got into running, I wasn't into sports growing up. To share some context, I've shared a little bit here. I used to be a 300-pound guy in New York City and got into lifting. And then around COVID time, 2020 is when I got into running. So like, and we all start the marathon for some reason, along with the popularity of running right now. And was like, yeah, I'm going to sign up for a marathon. And we can do it. I feel like anyone really can do a marathon if you're willing to commit to the time and training, right? Times is different depending on how you're training and past history and whatnot. But like respecting the marathon distance, like is hella important as I think we're all learning. So I just want to pause in that for at least the listener listening to hear that again. But what I do want to ask you though now, right? How was your recovery? What did you do to be able to run three in 1 year pretty much? And this journey you've been on the past 5 years of like, you're learning now that you want to respect distance, but like, you still did it. Like, kudos to you. Amazing. Like, badass for getting it done. But you must have done something to be able to continue to do it.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, don't forget that I also mentioned that I was in the gym before this. It's just, I just wasn't a cardio queen in the gym. I was like, lifting weights and I was really, really strong, but I didn't like running, so I didn't run. I'd go on the Stairmaster for 15 minutes and sweat my ass off and call it a day. Things like that, or like even like a cycling class or a cycling period. That was my cardio or assumed cardio, I should say. But so I think also to answer your question, at the same time as marathoning got popular, ice cold like plunges got popular. So I was doing plunges and just like sitting in the sauna at the gym, and simultaneously exactly that, I was also still in the gym. I think a lot of people who pick up running as their physical activity of choice, and that's great, but to be a better athlete or to be better at whatever it is that you're doing, you should also be pairing that with some strength in the gym. So, of course you're going to like have something that's tight or be feeling weak in one part of your body. So I always stress that like you must still go to the gym even though you've done your run. I'm not saying you need to do that every single day, but just like some people don't necessarily run every day. You don't need to go to the gym every day, but you need to be like hitting the gym like at least 3 times a week, and especially like targeting the things that might actually be giving you an issue. For example, I have found and learned that, and don't quote me on this, but a
It's
lot of
it's
the
on the internet
times
now. No, I'm kidding.
a lot of the times if you're feeling pain in a certain area, don't necessarily dig into it, but like in my case, like I've had some hamstring issues, but it's because of weakness. And so
Yes.
going to the gym to actually do those hamstring curls and not like avoid it is something that I'm doing and that I've learned from physical therapists is like actually what you should be doing, and or like if one thing is tight, like what is this connected to, or what's the opposite muscle of this, that like should I be taking a look at that and realizing that maybe that needs to be worked on. So to answer your question, and I know that was very long-winded, but like
No, you're good. You're
definitely
good.
go to the gym and do all the recovery things that you can do.
No, I agree with that. And funny enough, that segues into where I want to ask. But before I get to that, like my experience is more lifting than running. Funny enough, so like when I lost the weight, I spent a decade lifting and avoiding
Totally.
cardio.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, what are we doing cardio for? Just lift the weights faster.
Yeah.
But I agree with that. Like one thing I've learned, unfortunately, when you do get injuries, if you've been lifting a while or you've seen enough PTs, which is a good and a bad thing at the same time, you start to learn that don't shy away from those weak points. And funny enough, my injury currently is a post tibial, basically the inner ankles kind of hurt.
Yeah.
And as lifters, you can probably relate to this. We'll probably leg press a little bit all the time, right? Not a little bit, like mostly all the time. You'll do your lunges and all that. But one thing I noticed, even for the ones who do lift, and even more so for the people that don't lift and just get into running, we never really work on our foot strength. And that's
Yeah.
something I've always like, oh, who does that? Like for what? And it's something I've had to now do because it's like, hey, dude, you used to be a big guy, but even though it's been a while now, I'm also flat-footed, and it's like, oh, what kind of shoe, And max stack shoes are like all the rave right now. Don't get me wrong, I love max stack, but I've been forced to learn how to train my foot. The arches, and I've had knee injuries before, and luckily because I lift more lunges and leg press and stuff. But that's a great point on like working on those weakness areas in order to strengthen them, because in combination when you continue running, they'll both get stronger. That said, though, for those listening, Julia is the founder of Point B Movement. I do want to segue into that. Talk to me about Point B Movement, how it started, and what you're doing out there.
Yeah, totally. So, as I mentioned, I was running with a different crew and just understanding, my philosophy of how I like to approach running. And again, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it again, like popularity and being a woman in the space, it just felt like I needed to do my own thing.
Yeah,
And so that's really what happened. Like I was sitting around a table with my best friends and they were like, I think it's time for you to do your own thing. And I was scared. I didn't want to feel or be spiteful, but I did. Started Point B Movement. And of course, we have a weekly run. And of course, we have some really fun events that are surrounding running. And we have, weekly run that we do every Thursday. Currently out of session training gym, which has 3 locations around Brooklyn currently.
hmm
But we also, like all winter, because nobody's cycling outside in New York winter, had a partnership going with like Soul Cycle, for example, just to
nice.
get more cross training stuff offered to our athletes. And then throughout the summer, we'll also be hosting some cycling events. But I say all of that because Point B really is a movement collective, it's not another run club. Soon enough, run clubs are bound to like pop in terms of, wanting that many people together on the streets. Not saying it should end anytime soon, but, perhaps the cities might enforce some sort of like licensing for you to be able to do that. It's also kind of a hazard. Who knows when somebody's going to get hurt? Thank God, luckily, nobody has as of yet, like with, New York City traffic and all of that. Needless to say, I also wanted something reflective of myself. So having a place where I could offer everybody, a discount to be able to go to the gym, and having a place where they could have access again to discounts to cycling, and putting people onto cycling, and just creating a safe space for people to not be shy to move their bodies in other ways that
Yeah,
you definitely should be. It takes a lot for people to even show up to a run club, but then you're kind of asking people to get a little bit more vulnerable and, show how strong they are, perhaps again, like doing a squat or a lunge, or maybe their form is off. But then it's like, okay, well, if your form is off doing XYZ, maybe that's like something you really should focus on, because, like, then how strong of a runner can you be if you can't even do these things? And it's not to inhibit people, but it's more so to prove to them that they can and should be working on other parts and aspects of their bodies, and to help them move their bodies in ways that they might have not done alone. At the end of all of my runs, I make everybody do like an isometric hold, so 2 lunges and then a
nice.
squat. And they hate me for it, but I'm like, yeah, but you're bulletproofing all of your muscles that you need for when you're running. So if you can hold this for a minute, but you want to run like a 3:20 marathon, let's say, like, that's an amazing time. You should be very capable to hold this for just a minute. So it's funny to see like some of the people who breeze through those like end points, or who complains and they're like, damn, that was harder than like the 5 mile run we just did.
Yeah,
And it's interesting to see who follows through to like quote unquote do the homework, but it's also like really nice to see people from my same community then like in the gym, like getting the work done and knowing that like they'll be better for it.
that's so cool, man. I love that because you get to see, like, funny enough, Point B Movement, but like I'm picturing it in my head as you're saying that. You're seeing them run, you're seeing them lift, you're seeing them improve, you're seeing them hitting their goals in time. And to
And
start
it's
it,
just
I love how you started.
exactly, and it's reflective of me. Like I used to not be able to do a push up or like even a pull up, and now I could do a measly four, but I could still do four pull-ups, and I can still now like at least get through like 10 decently, performed push-ups and stuff like that. But, you need to get under a bar. You need to be able to do certain things just to like live longer and be healthy and function in a safe way to yourself. Like you'll see things on Instagram now saying and showing like, oh, you do like suitcase deadlifts so you can like pick up your groceries. And it's like, yeah, like who knows where you're going to be tomorrow or 20 years from now. Like, I don't know if you've heard of blue zones and stuff like that, but like people in Japan apparently live so long because they can like sit down
But
and get
yes,
up. Versus like
yeah.
Americans don't exactly like sit all the way on the floor or like get as mobile. They're super sedentary. And so that's like another thing of mine personally that, frustrates me. Like, I don't want to be like the culture that doesn't and isn't able to move and function. So I just think it's really important to be able to move your body in multiple ways and different ways.
You hit a nerve favorite topic of mine, especially as of recent. I was in Japan earlier this year. I freaking loved it.
I've only gotten as far as Seoul. I had like a
Okay.
layover in Japan, so I can't say I was ever in Japan properly, but I need to go. But I already know where you're going with this, and it's
Well,
amazing.
maybe. I highly recommend for sure. Obviously, the food and all that, and just the trip. But the rabbit hole I'm going on there is not necessarily the trip because you went to Seoul and you travel a lot. I feel like you'll get there at some point. Hell, maybe we do Tokyo sometime. The
Okay.
marathon. It's on my list. Funny enough, I was supposed to do it with our mutual friend Ali last year, but then I moved here to Colorado. I couldn't train. The altitude kicked my butt, and I was like, there's no way I'm doing 26.2. I'm still getting used to 6,000 feet. We were skiing, my first time skiing, and skiing is at like 10,000 feet. There was no
Yeah.
way I was able to train. I somewhat regrettably, but did the smart move of not running it regrettably because it's so hard to get in. I've been denied twice since,
Wow.
but lottery and whatnot.
Yeah.
But anyway, point being where I'm getting at is since that trip, I've been analyzing a lot. So, similar to you, like I like to learn stuff, and through my own experience, like being someone that couldn't do XYZ things, like I became a coach. I got certified to be a coach, not because I wanted to look cool or get certified. It was kind of like I just wanted the knowledge. And per this injury right now, I always, every time I've gotten injured, luckily, knock on wood, they've only been a few times. I was thinking of I had just done the Japan trip and I noticed so many differences between the culture and our culture, which is what you touched on. But I went to running, and this is where I'm going with this. Sorry to go about a roundabout way. It was, wow, people are more active. And I've read the Ikigai books and all that, where people live, I forget the town village that people live up to like 104, and it's the
Mhm.
average age. And a lot of it's movement, eating till you're like feel good, not like overly full and stuff like that. And one of the things that kept coming up in running and Japan and looking at Kenya and looking at all these other countries that do really well with running and just fitness in general is like staying active, eating good, right? They're not, I ate so much ice cream in Japan, it's insane, but like it was healthier, right?
Yeah, that too. Like they don't have all the additives that they put in the stuff here.
Exactly. You see where I'm going with this. So I'm just like, agree with you wholeheartedly on that, that like it's sometimes coming back a little bit like shameful that like wow we have so much access to resources here but yet like other countries are a lot more movement, living longer, eating better. And I love that you said you're doing your part, and that's kind of me here I guess as well. Like so I just want to touch on it because that's amazing. And yeah, it's been very eye-opening to delve into the Kenya, Uganda, and all these places who sleep better but with less comfy bed and all that,
Yeah.
and they're just getting it done.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the simple life is the best life.
Yeah, I don't know if it's me, but I feel like because I'm getting older, and I don't want to say that because I don't feel old by any reason. I hate when people say that, but it was just the first thing that came out of my mouth. Is I'm learning now that like simplicity is best, even with running, right? Like that's something. It's funny enough, something I want to share on one of the future episodes here. But like, we'll delve into this, and I'll pin it back to you on a question. There's so much popularity in running right now, and like run clubs, and I love it. As a person who wasn't fit majority of his life is getting into, I love seeing it, but it's like, okay, now because we are the Western civilization, do we need 10 sneakers and 10 supplements and
Yeah.
versus just getting out there and getting it done? And to your point, simple is better. Just get in the gym 3 times a week, go and see point B movement.
Exactly.
You know, I had to plug that in there for you. Let me ask you this though. So like, what have you seen? Like, what are some lessons, maybe for you, or even just with like people you've seen come through Point B movement? You know, from either a lifting standpoint or running standpoint. You know, just overall life standpoint. Like, what are some of the key things you've learned through this journey and you know, starting it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's helped me be a little bit more humble in terms of trusting that people will listen and just like do the process. And what I mean by that is like you don't need to hammer things home, but when you have philosophies and people listen to what your philosophies are and you see it work for them, and I just mean like basic things like saying like consistency is key and seeing people continue to come and show up and become like regulars and grow with people and see their journeys. And sometimes I'll forget what I even say, or like conversations, or like little things in conversations, not the whole conversation. Of course I remember I've spoken to someone for however long, but I'll forget like the nuggets I say, and then they'll remind me of them like months later, like, oh, like I always think about when you said XYZ to me, and I'm like, oh, damn, like it's so true. And I think that is kind of a lesson that, like, again, trust that the 2 cents of information that you've given out humbly just through a conversation, like people do pocket those nuggets and they come back and they're super helpful. And it might be like the most basic thing, but it could also be, like, hey, like remember to breathe while you're running. And like,
Yeah,
not that people aren't breathing, but they might be overly breathing or breathing a little bit too shallow, and like suddenly if they're like paying attention to their breath just a little bit more, they're shaving off like a minute or so off their mile time. And that means a lot when they're trying to run like a certain time for their marathon. Not that everything is time based, but it's nice when, if it is that for a goal, that they're able to get a little bit closer because of, again, the little nugget that I gave them
a
6 months
nugget, a
ago.
tweak. Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, that's dope and agreed. Yeah, like that's cool that you get to see that and then hear about it later. Like, oh, I said that. Damn, I'm good.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
cool.
Like a little pat on my back, like, okay, like I know I needed a crew when I first found mine, and I didn't even know I needed it. And to
Yeah.
now see and have people feel comfortable like hanging out with me and understanding this philosophy of like just being a well-rounded athlete, it's nice to see.
That's dope. Well, talking about that, I want to get into South Bend 400 because you had a team there, the only woman team to, you know, talk to me about South Bend 400. When I heard about this, I was like, wait, what? She did a what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Came
So it's
to
a
NYC.
newer race. So I understand why you might not have heard of it first and foremost, but
I mean, there's gonna be per what we've talked about just now. There's gonna be a lot new races, but this one's obviously very interesting and intriguing. I love the fact that it was like the only woman team. You guys crushed it. I saw some of the pictures and I was like, damn, this is like insane and dope at the same time. What was that like? One, racing it. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 400 miles total. Being the only woman team, I'm sure you guys dropped some people. I say that jokingly, but what was that experience like, and how did you get into that?
yeah, so I ran it the inaugural year, which was very interesting, very difficult, with grace to the directors of like finding, the best campsites they could and stuff. But getting to the start line at 5 a.m. every single day was difficult. But the next year, I actually was like, I'm not going to race it. I'll commentate. I will, you know, give everybody a little laugh throughout the day. If you know me, you know I'm like very funny, very blunt, very sarcastic, very New York. And being that it is a New York race through and through, I thought it was great that they had me. And, I'm honored that they let me be as much of a clown as I wanted to the entire weekend, which made for a lot of fun. And then, having started Point B last year, one of my friends was volunteering for the race last year in a different capacity, and she was like, I would want to do this, but for a team. Like, let's do a team. And I was like, that's such an exhausting weekend. I don't know. Like, whatever. Like, I've done it twice now. It's fine. Like, it's fine. And then I had a race director say like, hey, like you could do an all women's team. Like you could just do it with like your friends. I don't know, it could be super cool. And I thought about it, and I knew that another one of my best friends was doing TSP just before this, like a month. So I was like, well, she'll be ready, and she'll also like then have an understanding of what this is. And simultaneously, I did TSP Chamonix with one of my other friends last year, the inaugural year for TSP Chamonix. So she also had an understanding. The friend that came to me saying that she wanted to crew had been at Southbound, so she knew what she was getting herself into. And so, long story short, I was like, suddenly I have like kind of half the team here. I could find some other people that would be down to clown.
Okay.
And so, if they ran with me or not, if they're good friends with me or not, I wanted to put this team together. And so I did. I stayed with a friend who I met at Motive working out, because Motive
Mhm.
also offers classes outside of
Yep.
the physical therapy. And she's all the way from Berlin, from Germany.
Nice.
And she's who I stayed with for the Berlin Marathon. So I gave her a call and was like, would you want to do Southbound? And she was like, I actually would. So
Yeah, okay.
basically, like, slowly but surely, I ended up with this amazing team of female athletes from all over the world, like not just the US, but I had somebody else from Switzerland, I had my friend from Germany, I had my one friend come out from LA. So I had a very diverse crew, and I think I could have amassed a crew that was like faster and all of that, or more elite, or whatever you want, however you want to like describe that. But I was really proud to have put together a team that was diverse visually and with approach to run styles and speeds. I also knew from having ran with a lot of these people, obviously, um, that they were capable of running like a 6:45, 6:50 pace the entire way through. And so when I said that and announced it in like a team meeting leading up to the race, I was like, I think we should just be happy with that pace and not care where we end up on the leaderboard. Like, let's just see.
Blazing fast, by the way, but yeah.
Correct, correct. It's a fast race, I should say that. It's not like TSP where like you get there and like hurrah. And like that's cool if you make like the top 10 or whatever, top 50 even at this point at TSP, because it's such a big race. But this race, sure, it says you're running down the Empire State Trail, but a lot of it is pavement and a lot of it is like extremely runnable. So it's a fast race. Like people are not playing around. And there's cutoff times. Like you must start
Okay.
the race at 5 a.m. Everybody starts the race at 5 a.m. at the same, start line. And then I believe you have like till midnight to get there. Not that anybody takes that long, but I
Just
should
in
say
case.
like the winning team this year was like their overall pace was 5:30. Like you're running 5:30 for 400 miles? That
That's
is
insane, yeah.
fast. Yeah. So all in all, the first 2 days we did the math and we were at a 6:45 pace. We actually said I said 6:50 pace. So we were at 6:45, which means some of us were like flying.
Yeah.
And then day 3, we just had a little bit of difficulty kind of finding the trail through parts of like the Bronx and Manhattan, where you're kind of like, is this just the street or is this the trail? It's a bit confusing, to be honest. And access points to pick up runners and drop runners off is just like so much more different. So I will say, I think knowing the route on day 3 is essential to really acing the race. But all in all, we ended up with a 7:19 pace overall, which honestly, like in the grand scheme of running, is still so fast. And it was a great time. I had done, all of the mapping that I thought I knew ahead. I had basically separated the teams together, or separated the teams throughout before as well. So all of the logistics, I should say, were all figured out already.
Nice.
And then food was provided forth, luckily and honorably, through Spoonful and AG1 and some great partners that they had. So we really only had to worry about lunch, which we had in our van, and we had ourselves a time. I'm sure there will be many more other faster women's teams in the future, but I'm glad that like I was the first one, and like go for it to like beat the time now. Like 7:19, sure, like that's a fast pace, especially to someone who might be listening. It's like running a 10-minute mile, but to other people listening, that could be like a pretty kind of slow in terms of a race pace. So go for it. I'm happy. I have no issue with someone going ahead or just trying and wanting to have another women's team as well. I think if I did it again, I might not do a women's team and might do like a different approach and see how that
Like
works.
mixed?
Like maybe it's like completely all international people, what have you. Like I don't know. I'm not there yet. I'm still like enjoying this year, but this year was really great. I was also humbled and still kind of don't know how to feel with like having gotten the entire thing sponsored. I know people had to put up a lot of money to, finish the race and get the race done. And races like this that are unsanctioned, it's not like, you just pay for the bib and that's it. There's a lot of other
Yeah.
additional components that go into like even getting to the race start and be able to do this sort of a thing. So I feel so blessed that like brands were willing to work with me and my team to see us and help us do this. So it was really nice.
Yeah, sounds like a very well thought out race and planned for. I love that you guys had food ready. Like you had logistics down and you got food. Like I just need to run. What?
I think day one they had pizza for everybody, and then day two they had like burritos and stuff. So a big lift for that amount of people, but also like perfect food for when you've finished running like 130 miles.
Yeah. So some
And then
fats and
breakfast was
protein.
like, yeah, exactly. And then breakfast was like overnight oats and pastries and coffee, like exactly what a runner needs. So that was good. But I also definitely had like creatine gummies and like electrolytes and all the things on the van itself for us to be able to use.
That's dope. What were some of, I guess, because I'm sure like you guys had them. It's a long race. Like what were some of the highs and lows you experienced through that, or even some of your teammates?
Yeah. I think sometimes in any race, people hold back just a little. And even though we were running this like 6:45, 6:50 pace, I think we were all very like nervous to not gas ourselves out, knowing that we still had like, for example, day one, 2 days ahead of us, or like on day two, we ended up getting into like this battle with another team, knowing that we had a whole another day of racing. Day two, I mean, every day we actually ended up ninth out of 10, but I'll be damned. I was like, you know what? We're not the last team. So, again, considering the paces that everybody was putting down, I
Yeah.
was happy to not be the last ones out there. And I think that does say a lot. But day two was a bloodbath battle. There were tears, there were screams, there was a lot. It was also raining at the end of this, and this battle
Yikes.
was like 5 hours going back and forth with this team and running paces that like I've even like never seen me put out before. Like we were doing like 200-meter dashes, like every round bend we saw, like that's where we were stopping our cars and switching out runners, and of course it was kind of a safety hazard as well, but it was like the entire time we were like, should we keep battling them? Like, should we keep trying? And like every 4 miles, we would like get ahead, and then the other team would get ahead somehow. And so it was just like relentless and some of the hardest racing I've ever done and ever seen firsthand. Like some of those back roads, they were dirt roads, and it was just like kicking up like dust storms with how fast the cars were going, and it was so exhilarating. But I don't think any of us would like ever want to take it back. I think it showed all of us exactly how much we are capable of. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was the lesson in and of itself. Like just knowing your limit, knowing your capacity, knowing how much you should and can put out. And then also like coming back the next day, three of those runners on that other team were out. So I was like,
Oh.
damn. Not only did
Okay.
we battle them out and win the second day, but we also like took out three of their 8 runners.
Yeah. That's dope.
And then their team actually came in like a minute before the cutoff time of the race.
Ugh.
So they had like just made it, and that is an honor in and of itself to, be able to race against a team that's like putting in that much work with, such few runners. So
What's the full cutoff time? I'm just curious.
I think it's like the full like 12 hours.
Got it. Okay.
Not, or yeah. Yeah, it's the full 12 hours. Or maybe it's midnight every night. I've got to check the rule book again, but I think it might be like 12.
Okay.
And they got in like right before then.
Well, congrats. That sounds amazing. I'm just thinking of it as you're saying it, like just planning the logistics. Luckily, food check, but like the logistics, the maps. I don't know this course. Like it's wild. It sounds
Well,
like an
like
amazing
some
endeavor.
people, totally. Some people might be like, okay, it's the Empire State Trail. What's there to plan? And then you like look, and there's like junctions that go in between like these
Yeah.
small towns and stuff. So, you know.
I want to ask you because we haven't touched on this, but I'm curious now. Like, you lift, you cycle, you run. You talked to, and what I'm getting at is you talked about electrolytes and like creatine gummies. What do you take? Like, what's your nutrition like? What kind of supplements you like? What's your go-to stuff?
I definitely take a multivitamin every day. That's for women. A very good one by like, I'm forgetting. Of course, like when I go to say these things, I forget the
It
brand
happens. It's
name.
all good.
Yeah. But I do take a multivitamin and an extra vitamin C every day. Some turmeric, curcumin to help with inflammation. A bit of iron, depending on the time of month. Of course, magnesium and a little bit more potassium. I also take some chlorophyll, and from time to time, I get on black seed oil just to help like
Okay.
detox certain things within the body. You know, gunk builds up. You're also like, as a runner, personally, I'm not like one of those like sugar fiends. Like, I don't exactly like, how can I say this? I don't get Starburst and like Sour Patch Kids and things for
I
my
get what you
fuel.
mean. Yeah, like I eat
I
candy
don't
and
fuel
gummies.
that
I can't do
way.
that.
Yeah, I don't fuel that way. I definitely am like fine with my Mortons and like real food. I think
Yeah.
maybe because like I've had this like stint in ultra running or ultra relays that I know that real food in the end will be beneficial, especially having done like that trail race I mentioned. You know, you need real food. You can't just be
Yeah.
sucking down gels all day. You'll throw up. But you know, you might throw up having real food too if you don't practice with it. But all that to say, I definitely also, especially now that it's really hot out, I'm actually an athlete for Magna electrolytes, which I think are really great. You know, I'm gonna sound a little bit like an ad right now, but it's real.
All good.
It's true. But you know, 75% of people are magnesium deficient, and it helps with your cell turnover and your muscles to feel as best as they can and work proficiently. So I do think it's one of the better electrolytes on the market, and their flavors are phenomenal. Like they came out with this apple flavor, and I was like, well, this is sure to be
Okay.
disgusting. And I tried it, and I was like, this is the only electrolyte I ever want to drink again. Like if I can feel like I'm 5 years old at the amusement park sucking
You
on
got me
like,
sold a little bit there
you
now.
know, like a Martinelli's, like that electrolyte apple flavor from Magna is delicious. And then they also came out with this like blood orange flavor, which is like, I don't know, the adult version of like high C or something to that effect. It's so delicious. So it it's something that I can gladly drink every day and that I do drink every day, especially at the top of my day. And you know, hopefully leave the battery on E by the end of the day, but it's definitely what I'm starting my day out with.
Okay. That apple sounds, I don't know,
Oh,
for some reason,
it's
I thought of the
seasonal,
apple
so wait for
juices.
it to come back.
Okay. Apple juices in school back in NYC is what popped
The
in my head. I was like, oh,
Martinelli's,
wait
it
a minute.
tastes just like a Martinelli's. It's
Okay.
delicious.
I'll have to check that out. I'm curious to ask you this one, given everything we talked about and just now, like, what's a running myth you would like to be busted amongst most runners?
That you need to do a certain amount of volume of running to have a good race.
Okay. Not what I thought you was going to say. Tell me more.
I've seen it with a few athletes recently, and a few athletes that are built a little bit more like myself, that have a little bit more muscle in their body, but that have still pumped out like amazing race times better than mine. And they're only running like 35 or 40 miles a week, which is amazing. And so I think that there's a way to be a little bit more proficient with your time. Not saying that's all you do, but going back to my philosophy on why the gym is so important. If you're in the gym getting proper plyometric training in and bulletproofing those specific joints that you need to be ready to run, like, you know, doing box jumps and step downs and other things that will make you a proficient runner, I think that you can get away without so much of the wear and tear and time that it takes to be running such high mileage. At least an athlete like myself, I honestly think I might take that approach the next block that I have. It's something that I told my coach when I was training for London. I was like, hey, this is just a lot for me. And I was getting it done because I was, and I still do believe in his training philosophy of like
Of course, yeah.
getting comfortable with high mileage because like you're going to run a marathon that's high mileage. But I was telling my coach, I think I need more tempo runs and like quicker shifting runs to be proficient because I think that I just feel slow and it feels more difficult for me to get to my race pace now that I'm running as easy as I am as often as I am. And I spoke to a few other athletes like Joe Holder with Nike, and he basically said the same thing. He was like, "Yeah, I didn't run more than 35 miles a week when I was training for my last marathon, and I did a really decent time." So I do think that there's ways around it. Not saying that it should be everybody's way around it, because I know everybody has a different philosophy, but I do think that if you train smart and hard, you can potentially get away with not doing as much
Yeah, I'll
in
say
terms of running. In terms of running.
yeah, because there's
There's also other athletes that have definitely like said aloud like I wouldn't be as strong of a runner if I didn't have this much strength under my belt.
yeah. No, agreed for sure. Science even backs it up a little bit. I'll paraphrase here. Don't quote me, anyone listening to this, but like, especially on the plyometric side, like there's a study, again, I'm paraphrasing here, but there's a study that shows those who do plyometrics, I believe it's 3 times a week, efficiency in running goes up anywhere between 8-12%. I remember somewhere around that. Like, yeah, that's not more miles, but the goal in running is efficiency. The reason why we run more mileage is efficiency. So if you're getting that via another avenue, like, yeah, we'd want more efficient. And efficiency, to break it down simple for those listening, is really like, I'm more comfortable at this pace. Maybe I got more steps, cadence in this pace, which obviously makes the pace easier. So agreed, and what I want to ask you is, based on what you said, with muscle and lifting, I kind of went through that dynamic myself. Like I used to be a lot more muscular and then got into running, and now I'm kind of like somewhere in between, wanting to less or more. But for those listening, because I'm sure most people go through this, would you say you are more of a endurance, like you have more endurance versus speed, or you have more speed versus endurance? And I have a follow-up to that.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm an endurance person because I could slow down and
Okay.
I could keep walking and I could maybe walk 300 miles, but, you know, am I like, I haven't even hit my goal marathon pace yet. Again, it's like a relentless
Okay.
pursuit, but, you know,
What's that goal
I know I
marathon
have
pace?
the capacity to do it. I just need to figure out and have a good training block to do it.
Okay. It's funny. That's one of those things. When I mentioned earlier, looking at Japan and Kenya and all that stuff, I've been looking into training, and this is based on everything we're saying right now. For anyone listening, there's 100 ways. Sorry to use a cliche here, to skin a cat, right? Like, you can run more mileage, you can run less mileage, you can lift a lot more, you can not lift a lot more. But one thing I noticed a trend around them is that they run more. I want to say longer repeats than we do out here. What I mean by that is like 1200 versus 2400. Um, 1K repeats versus, I've noticed a lot. Let's just say Western, for example, we'll do like a 400 followed by a 200 into an 800 or something like that, which is like the faster twitch. And it's funny because the longer rep is more on the endurance side versus like, we're really good in the Western side of like getting that speed twitch, at least at the higher levels, or those that run shorter distances. So just, I don't know, a thought that popped in my head as we discussed this. But on that note, you saying you're more of an endurance. I relate to that because I'm kind of the same way. Like, I struggle with the turnover, and it's something I'm working on now. And it's just like, man, I could run 4 or 5 hours, no problem. Ask me to do a 20-minute 5K. Okay, give me a good training block first. That's a whole nother story. But hey, we in this to learn. What is your goal marathon time? I wanted to ask you.
I really want to BQ, but like more than BQ. So I think BQing right now for women is like a 3:26. My fastest
Uh-huh.
marathon is a 3:38. I know I could do like a 3:15 or a 3:20. And I also know that I have to do that to actually get into Boston because, again, everybody
Yeah,
runs. So you can't just hit that 3:26 and like you're
you need a
in.
buffer.
Because, like, yeah, you need a bit of a buffer. So I would love to hit like a 3:15, 3:20 marathon.
Okay, that's a
I don't think
30
that's too
minutes.
much to ask for. I don't think
I
that's too
mean,
much to ask for. I think that is aggressively fast. I also think that it's okay to strive to want to be fast. I'm not shaming people who are slower runners, but I think it's great to have a goal, and it's great to have a lofty goal too. I think recently there's been a lot of shame in pace on both spectrums. You know, people get jealous when people are even a minute faster, or dare I say, like 30 seconds faster. And then people feel this aggressive amount of shame with running 10-minute miles. But, like, that's what I run for my comfortable pacing. Like for my
yeah.
easy runs all week, I'm like, yeah, I'll run a 10-minute mile. And people are always like intimidated sometimes to like go to point B. They're like, well, you run so fast. I'm like, I don't run so fast actually. I'm actually having to pace the people in the front that are faster, but I'm always going to make sure that everybody's there at a red light and nobody's going to get left behind.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's one of my things. Of part why I started this, I kind of want to share the different types of runners, and I've had all fast, slower, fast, whatever,
Yeah.
relatively. I mean, you should just be happy you're out there, and I think a lot of that comes from social media and whatnot, and how big the sporting event has come. But I've seen runners who started at like 4 and now they're like 2, and I've seen vice
My
versa.
first marathon was a 4:44.
See, there you go.
Yeah, and then what, not like 9 months later, suddenly I was 4:05, and then LA was 3:51, so it was starting to become a thing of like every marathon I did I was like 10 minutes faster. So,
Consistency. I can't say it enough. Consistency and do it repeatedly. That's really what people I feel should strive for, and the name of the game, because you will improve as long as you want to and continue to do it.
totally.
But I love that. Wow, from 4:40 to or 4:30, I forgot just now, but
4:44 to 3:38. That's like, yeah,
sheesh,
more than an hour in like a year and a half, 2 years of running.
that's
So,
amazing.
yeah.
For anyone listening, listen to that part twice. If
And
you
it's
think
just
you're slow,
nothing more than that. It's just exactly that. It's consistency.
there you
And
go.
figuring it out. Different types of running too. Like this last block for me was the most I ever ran. I don't think I ever want to run that much again. Partially I let it be because I knew I had southbound coming right after London
Yeah,
Marathon, but yeah, it's a lot.
that is a lot from London to southbound. So what's next for you? What race? I know you said you want to respect the distance. So what are you thinking?
I think I just, well, I don't have anything on the race calendar. I
Okay.
signed up for the Brooklyn Mile, but I signed up like under friends and family to fun run the mile, and I'm gonna do it with my dog.
Okay.
So I am just like trying to really genuinely bring back running for fun, especially for
Yeah.
myself. It could look potentially like running some like unsanctioned races and fast local unsanctioned races. Like, unfortunately, my dog decided to throw up the other day, but there's this crew called Reckless out here that does this race from like, it's the same bar, Ray's Bar, which is popular. They have one in Miami and things like that. But there's a Ray's in the Lower East Side in Manhattan, and then there's a Ray's in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. So it's basically a 5K, and I was gonna race that just, over the Williamsburg Bridge, but had to skip out on that.
Okay.
But all that to say, yeah, I do not have a bib for Chicago. I feel exhausted thinking of the idea of training for Chicago this year, but I think I would definitely like to finish up the majors. So this year just looks like me cross training. So I think just getting back on my bike and doing some long rides up to like Bear Mountain and doing some like nice, fun, scenic cycling rides and just having fun with running again.
Okay. That's the best way to do it. I mean, if you're having fun, something will pop up for sure. You'll get the bug.
Yeah, no, I mean, I still have the bug. I need a second. I've
Yeah.
done too much so quickly that I know I can give myself a little bit of time before jumping back on.
Well, I'm looking forward to it for you, to be honest. With you, now that we're acquainted and I can follow the story some more.
I think maybe, hopefully, next year I can find a bib for Chicago, and I'd like to give Chicago a good go at that marathon time that I
Have you
really
ran it
want to get.
before?
No, I
Chicago?
haven't. So I've done New York twice. I did LA, I did Berlin, and I did London.
Okay.
So I still have to finish up the other three, or four if you're considering Sydney now.
New York, Chicago are the two I've done. New York was my first. For those listening, I do not recommend that unless
New
you're a
York
New
is the
Yorker.
hardest major, period.
It was brutal.
New York is the hardest major. I think it's harder than Boston. Not that I've run Boston, but I think it's harder than Boston. The
I will say
bridges,
the
the bridges
vibes.
take you out. Still at the end, respectfully, but like having ran LA, if you actually go online, you can see that the LA and Boston course is comparable. So I really liked LA, so I was like, I think I'll have a good go when I do eventually do Boston, but Chicago's the next one to at least try for that 315.
I might have to check LA since it's an easier flight for me now than it was when I was in New York.
Yeah, you should. Well, this is what I say to people when we run at Point B. I'm like, if you could see the top of a hill, it's not a hill. And whatever goes up must come down. So
Yeah.
when you dig, just know that there's a little treat for you on the other side. If it's not down, at least it's flat.
Yeah, we'll see. But on that note, since you said what you tell, to wrap it up on that, what advice would you give for those listening, whether newer, faster, or following your story and kind of be like, damn, I kind of want to do some of what she's done. Like, what would you say?
Yeah. Definitely find your angle in terms of what you like to do and what your approach is, like what will serve your body and your brain, so that you feel like you're doing something you genuinely enjoy. And obviously, with running, if you don't hate it a little, you don't love it. Um, so there's that, but definitely find
Or
your
you're going
angle.
too easy?
Like, if you want to run a 5K and run a good 5K, be happy with running a 5K. Again, like, you don't have to run the marathon. Also, like, I have friends who are just bizarrely fit and just started running, and now they just went and ran a marathon just in New York, like from their house down to Central Park. So you can do literally whatever you put your mind to, just put your mind to it.
Dope. Okay. Well, on that note, where can people follow more of you, Julia, and hear
Yeah,
more
I
of
mean,
and
you
see all
can
your awesomeness?
definitely follow me personally, on my
Okay.
Instagram, and then follow along on Point B for any of the events that we're going to be doing throughout the summer. You might see a little unsanctioned moment happening sometime this summer.
Okay.
And then we're definitely going to get on our bikes and take a ride out to Rockaway and enjoy the beach. New York is a very seasonal place, so you have to get out to the beaches that
Yeah.
we do have when you can. So we'll be at Rockaway. We'll be doing some running. So get into
I'm
it.
looking. I'm looking at getting out there myself again. One, because I got to visit the family, but Ali keeps telling me, "Hey, come run the Motive NY."
Yeah,
So I'm shooting for the September one because I think my injury will be healed. The mileage is starting to come up a little bit, and I'm starting to feel good. So September will be not too hot, and it'll
sure.
be. I mean, we'll see. Here the problem here in Colorado is because we are at altitude. This is just my personal take. I feel like the sun hits harder
It does. It
and there's
does.
no shade anywhere. Now, New York, growing up there, humidity is a whole nother animal. So,
Totally.
but I should be in good shape by then. I have a fall race I'm gonna do, and by September it'll be a good measure and also just fun. I saw the vibes from this past weekend. I'm like, oh my god, I want to go there now.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, but we can link up then if you're running it and stuff like that. I'll obviously come by and visit and stuff if that's cool with you. See Point B and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Anybody is welcome.
Dope. Okay. I love lifting too. So that you got me on there. Let's lift some heavy stuff and then not run speed the next day, but we'll figure that out.
Unless you want a taste of what I do, because that's what I do. I'll take
Okay.
a
See,
motive
that
like
might be
kettlebell class. I'll take a motive kettlebell class on like a Monday night, and then I'll go do track like Tuesday morning. And then we'll do the long run that weekend.
okay. I'll let you know once I book the flight. It's almost certain because I always got to visit the family a few times. It's easier
Great.
for me to go over there than them. So that's it for those listening. This has been the People Run podcast. Thank you, Julia, for hopping on. If you're listening to this, or if you know someone that would like to listen to this or can relate, we're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, the People Run podcast, same handle. Check us out on Instagram. Check out Julia's story and everything she's doing with Point B Movement and herself. I'll maybe put something in the description. Thank you for listening. Thank you again, Julia. I appreciate you guys. Until next time, this has been the People Run Podcast.